Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So today is just an intro for you. The video is coming up. I originally wanted it to be super long, but I've now split it into two. So in this first half, you'll see how I got into Japanese culture and then how I decided to move to Japan for the first time. And the next video will follow on from there. So I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Bye. First of all, I thought we'd have a chat about how exactly I got into Japanese culture, right? So why did I move to Japan? I've had somebody message me and ask me whether my parents were in the military or something like that, and the answer is no. The movements to Japan were completely independent of, not completely independent of my parents, but it wasn't to do with any of their jobs or anything like that. So first of all, how I got into Japanese culture. I was born and raised in London. And at the age of 15, my mum decided to move us out of London and into the Midlands of the UK. So once I moved there, as you can imagine, it was a bit of a culture shock. London is obviously bustling, it's very diverse, there's a lot of different type of people, lots of cultures. Where I moved to in the Midlands, it was not like that at all. So as you can imagine, it was really hard for me to get used to this new way of being with people that didn't necessarily look like me, who had very different value systems to myself as well. So I found myself being very lonely over the summer holiday. Our summer holiday is about, I want to say it feels like about 2 months, but it's probably a little bit shorter than 2 months when you're at school. So I was like 15, 16 years old, and it was the summer. It was just me and my dog hanging out every single day when my mom went to work. And so I just thought, you know what, let's watch some movies. So every day we had a routine. We get up, get dressed, go for a walk, come home, watch a movie, play some games, and that was basically it. Then just wait until mom came home so we could have some real fun, right? So one of the films that I was watching was the Fast and Furious series. And I still love Fast and Furious till this day. But it was my first time watching Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. So I pop on this DVD and I am blown away. I'm like, Tokyo is so cool. Japanese culture is so cool. And it is a very Americanized version, obviously, because it's Fast and Furious. But just the look of the city itself, like the technology and all those sorts of things, it just drew me in. And I was like 16, so it was very easily swayed, as you can imagine. So that's when I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna visit Japan one day within the next 3 years. Like, I didn't know when, because I never really planned any travel by myself. I'm like 15, 16. My mom was very good when I was younger. I got to travel quite a bit. I got to travel with my school as well. So my school took me to places that aren't too far from here. So France, Germany, Italy. I went to a school that specialized in language. So I got to visit quite a few countries for the languages that I was taking. But bear in mind, I was terrible at those languages. I learned French, German, and Italian, and I don't remember a thing. Like, I think it's because it didn't really matter to me at the time, so I wasn't really concentrating and I wasn't applying myself, but I really wasn't good at it at the time. So after I watched this movie, I'm super hyped. I'm like, I'm gonna go to Japan one day. So I'm like, well, if I wanna go to Japan, I need to learn some easy phrases, right? So I start to learn hello, you know, the basics, konnichiwa, and like sumimasen, which is excuse me, arigatou gozaimasu, which is like thank you, and all that stuff. So I'm learning these things, and it's so fun, to the point at which I'm like, I just love the sound of this language. For a lot of people, I think that get into Japanese culture, I think it's usually like things like anime or cosplay or drama that gets you into it and you fall in love with the culture, right? But for me, actually, seeing the scenes in Tokyo Drift was enough to make me want to visit. But what really made me want to study the language and visit for like a longer term, so not a holiday, was the language itself. I really enjoyed learning it. I got into the grammar, and it just spiraled from there. So I spent 2 years learning the language. Basically, I want to go out on a limb and say I didn't really skip a day in my study. So for 2 years straight, I was just like studying every single day, and it was my favorite hobby. It wasn't hard. A lot of people say, oh, was learning Japanese hard? No, it wasn't, because it was just so fun. I found it fun. Even when I was confused, I still found it fun. On my walls everywhere in my bedroom, it was all like Japanese verbs and nouns. And I would like stand there, like trying to string together like sentences, pointing at different words. I would be like narrating my day, like, now I'm getting up, now I'm going to get a drink, now I'm going to bed, now I'm eating a sandwich. And it was so fun for me. So I got into Japanese culture that way. So when I did my A levels, which in England is like 2 year study, where it would be the last 2 years of high school, I believe, in America. But it's like a separate school from our high school, which is our secondary school. We finish that at 16, and then we go to college. And some people do like vocational skills, some people do academics, which falls under the umbrella of usually A levels. So I did my A levels. No school in my region did Japanese, so I was just studying that on the side while I did my A levels. But I knew that I wanted to do Japanese studies when I got to university. I knew that that was the thing for me. So I started researching, I went to visit schools, and I really had a great time doing that. So we have the open days for the universities, and I went with both my parents, and we went to visit a school in London that specialized in Asian studies, Asian and African studies, I think it was. And during the talk that the lady was giving, I won't name the school, but if you're from England and you consider doing Japanese studies or Korean studies, maybe you probably visited this school. But I did go for the open day, and during the talk, the lady made it sound so unobtainable. Like she was like, yeah, like it's the best school in the UK for this. Like it's not she said something along the lines of, it's not about whether you want to come here, it's about whether we want you here, basically. And I remember feeling like this big after the open day, and I really didn't enjoy it. But I was saying to my parents, I was worried because obviously I was good at Japanese at this point, but it wasn't one of my A levels because it's not something that I could study anywhere near me. So the subjects that I did English language, English literature, psychology, and business. So obviously unrelated. And even though I was quite good when I was in school at academics, as I got older, I found it so difficult to study things that I wasn't interested in. And so my grades were still above average, but they weren't like, the A stars that university really wanted. So after that open day, I was a little bit down, and I remember walking back to my dad's car, and he was like, what? He was a bit sad because he could see how I felt, I guess. But he was like, why do you even need to go to university for Japanese studies? Like, why don't you just go to a language school in Japan? And I'd never thought about that because I didn't think I was capable. I'd never done anything like that before. It was an amazing idea, and it came straight from dad, which made it even better. So that was the day when I decided, and we started planning towards that. So rather than going to university that year, I actually took a gap year. So I deferred my entry for 1 year. I still applied to the universities though, and I applied for deferred entry. And in my letter to them, because in the UK we have to write like a letter about why we want to study what we're studying and why we want to go to that university. So in my letter I did say, like, I'm planning to go to Japan this year to study Japanese at a language school in Japan. And I think that really helped my application because I didn't really get the grades that I needed. I was a little bit below, but I think that really helped push my case forward. And during the interviews, I always made sure I mentioned that as well. I think that really helped. It was my first time going to Japan. I was a student at a Japanese language school. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. So this is how I got into Japanese culture. I hope you found the video interesting. If you think that it cut off a bit abruptly there, it definitely did, and that's because I went on to talk about exactly how I moved to Japan 3 times. So that will be my next upload in a couple of weeks, I think, probably after I do a bit of a story time. But apart from that, without further ado, I'll leave you with the outro, and I'll see you in the next one. So that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video about how I got into Japanese culture. If you have any questions, please leave them below. It might take me a while, but I do read and reply to all of my comments. So thank you in advance, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.